what's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? How we doing? Your Bruin dynamic duo back together again, the Thriller and Madman, for all of your UCLA football needs. And we have an awesome show here for you. Going to talk about what happened on Saturday. We're going to sort of cover all of that, and then some very interesting insights and elements that have come up over the last couple of days as they pertain to UCLA football. But before we jump into any of that, we got to check in with the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Will the Thrill Decker. Brother, how we doing?
Dude, I'm doing great, but I mean, it was this guy's birthday this past week, and Mr. Jamal Madney's. He had a great time. It was Palm Springs, was it? Is that right?
Palm Springs Thriller. Yeah, just kind of got away for the weekend with the family. Really a wonderful time. So thank you for bringing that up. And, you know, a year older and a year more passionate to be doing UCLA coverage with my brother, the Thriller.
Love it, man. Yeah, it was a weekend I think we got to kind of just flush out of the memory outside of your birthday, I think, from a sports standpoint. But you know, I think Indiana's just that good, man. Like, it's hard to argue with what they're doing. Like, we came on this exact pod a year ago after the Indiana loss, and it felt like a funeral. We thought we were like the worst team in the country, and now you just see what they're doing with Signetti at the helm, and it's like it's kind of to be expected. It's impressive, and man, that just points to if UCLA can nail this next coaching hire, man, maybe we could see some of the fruits of the labor that Indiana is experiencing right now.
No question about it, Thriller, and great segue as always into the game against the number 2 Indiana Hoosiers in Bloomington. We knew this was going to be a stretch, and I think our realistic goals were, hey, as long as we could keep this sort of competitive, build on the momentum, we had talked about it, right? I mean, I think the world here of potentially making a bowl game just felt like 2 games were very unattainable. At Indiana, we still got that game at Ohio State. Unfortunately, Thriller, the ability to make this a competitive game sort of slipped away from our fingertips relatively early, right? I mean, we're talking about the very first possession, first 2 plays of the game. Nico gets sacked, and then it's a pick 6. You know, you get a sort of a 3 and out. Indiana gets the ball. The lone bright spot there was that the pass rush, Keanu Williams, the tip ball, Scooter Jackson gets it. You're thinking, hey, we got something here. Drive stalls out. Indiana goes 14-0, another 3 and out, 21-0. Before you knew it, in the blink of an eye, then you go for it there. You know, on your own 29-yard line, Berger fumbles. It's 28-0, 19 and a half minutes into this game. And we were basically in a glorified garbage time. So it was just one of those games where a really, really good team jumped out on us early. I think the team got a little shell-shocked, and I think just the crowd, the energy, it just all kind of snowballed in the wrong direction there. But I think, Thriller, the bye week comes at a really opportune time now. You reset the board, because let's not forget, all of this stuff that happened with Jerry going into the Penn State game. Remember, that was 2 days to prepare. You have the Penn State game. You have the Michigan State game. You have all these emotions, then Maryland, then Indiana. It's really been a whirlwind last 4 weeks emotionally. Just think 1 month ago, our coaching staff was DeShaun Foster, Ikaika Malloy, and Tino Sanseri. That feels like 5 years ago. So I think this will be a nice opportunity for the team to reset the board, sitting there at 3-5, still with everything that we want to play for. I mean, again, 4 games to go. You got that at Ohio State. That's going to be another really tough one. Home for Nebraska, home for Washington, Victory Bell game. Like we said, if you can get those 3 and get to bowl eligibility, it would be an incredible season. But before we kind of talk big picture and macro level, Thriller, just your thoughts on the game and, you know, what you think of Indiana, which is a team that has struggled so historically. And my goodness, these last 2 years, what Kirk Signetti has done, it's historic. It's transcendent. We haven't really seen it in college football. You know, Thriller, you and I are such big basketball guys, both NBA and college. I talked about this with some friends offline over the weekend. I said, you know, college football has never had a Cinderella before. And, you know, is Indiana the closest thing to a Cinderella? I mean, they're a juggernaut this year. So to call them a Cinderella this year is a misnomer. But just historically, I mean, for a team to be able to do this, potentially win the national championship in year two of Coach Signetti, we haven't seen anything like this, Thriller.
Yeah, that was an interesting point you brought up with Cinderella. The closest I could think of was those Boise State teams with Chris Peterson back in the day, but even they weren't sniffing like this high in the rankings. And, for Signetti, I know he just got re-upped for a new contract. This guy is worth like $30 million. Like what he is doing for this program right now. Because when you look at the Sabans, the Urbans, the Dabos, the Kirby Smarts, they dominate. But you look at the caliber of players they recruit in there and how they're doing it. What Signetti is doing is he's taking a bunch of James Madison transfers and a bunch of unranked kids, and they are kicking the competition's ass, Madman. I have not seen anything close to this probably since Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. Like that was the first time, those early years where Toby Gerhardt was like a 2-star recruit, and those young teams were coming up and they were smashing, Pete Carroll at SC and some of these other squads. He's just, he's so confident. He's got that cocky swagger. Dude, he may not have the temper, but doesn't he kind of bring some Bob Knight cockiness?
Totally.
It's kind of perfect, man, that Indiana got a coach like this on the gridiron. And like I told you this before, but I had probably the closest I've ever had to a viral tweet this past weekend talking about Signetti and what he was able to do. They have a top 5 defense and offense in the country right now in the Big Ten. It's a special time.
It's ridiculous.
Getting Mendoza is looking like maybe the best transfer portal hit of any team in the country right now, given that he's, either 1 or 2 on your Heisman ballot as it stands right now. The defense is the most impressive part to me because Signetti's an offensive guy. The fact that he's got this defense playing at this high of a level, dude, it was over from the beginning. Like pick 6 immediately. We were 1 of 11 on third downs. We were averaging about 422 yards a game with Jerry at the OC helm coming into this. We got 211 as a team. So like that tells you how good that defense is and what they're doing. It's just a wild thing to talk about that Indiana may be the best team in the country at this point. I think Ohio State is definitely in your 1 or 2 conversation, but what Curt Signetti is doing should not be taken for granted and should be worth his weight in gold when it comes to his next contract negotiation. This guy's unbelievable, man.
Unbelievable indeed, Thriller, and so well said. And I love the Bob Knight comparison, obviously, with Indiana. And, I remember that famous quote of Bob Knight, when he was sort of at Assembly Hall for his sort of retirement speech. And he said, when my time on earth is done and my activities have passed, I hope they bury me upside down so my critics can kiss my ass. And if you close your eyes, Signetti could totally say that.
1,000,000%. And it's one of the greatest quotes in the history of sports. That is fantastic stuff. Bob Knight, I don't know if Signetti is going to be flagged for throwing a chair on the field or something like that. But in terms of the cockiness, the swagger, it's like, we're not just going to win, we're going to dominate. And he knows it, and he's talking his crap. Very similar to Knight. So it's hilarious that a university that had such a strong presence on the basketball floor now has one on the gridiron. It's just a perfect combination for the Indiana fans.
Perfect combination for Indiana and Thriller. Some incredible foreshadowing here, right? A great basketball school that, struggled in football historically, and then boom, in the blink of an eye, you get that coach right. You find that insight, you unlock that talent, and then you sort of couple it with NIL support in the form of Mark Cuban. Folks don't realize that this correlation between Indiana's success on the football field has a lot to do with Mark Cuban, Indiana graduate, really re-upping and re-engaging his financial commitment to Indiana athletics in a very significant way. He was always a big donor. He gave $2.5 million for a sports complex several years ago. But all indications have been, and our sources have told us, that has elevated in a very significant way, potentially even by an order of magnitude, to be able to be that primary linchpin, Indiana's Casey Wasserman, if you will, Indiana's Phil Knight, if you will, and really taking this program to the next level. And the Signetti-Mark Cuban relationship was really the cause of that. Both Pittsburgh guys, Thriller, and both their connection, I think, has enabled Cuban to give in a significant way. So you get that right coach, you get the right finances, you can win very, very quickly in this day and age of college football. And you know what's also significant, Thriller, and I'll kick it over to you. The fact that Ohio State and Indiana don't play each other in the regular season is making this even more sort of delicious, right? I mean, you're headed to a number 1 versus number 2 Big Ten championship game. And we just haven't had an end of a Big Ten season quite this historic since that great Michigan-Ohio State 1 versus 2 game there, Thriller, in the mid to late 2000s, which was so significant. Ohio State ultimately won that game, went to the Natty. Michigan had to play SC in the Rose Bowl. I mean, we're headed to a 1 versus 2 Big Ten championship game, and what a schedule for UCLA to have to play both of them this year, and not only play both of them this year, but play them both on the road. So it would make it even more historic to play 1 on the road, 2 on the road, go through everything that you did with the coaching to be able to skin your way to a bowl game. Oh my God, would really make this a memorable season.
Incredibly memorable. And the Big Ten is, I mean, if they get a national champion this year, they get the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country as it stands right now. This would be 3 consecutive years that a Big Ten team has won the national title. I mean, the SEC was the dominant conference for a long time, but it seems like when the money was put on the table, because these are proud universities. You mentioned Mark Cuban at Indiana, Ohio State, the donor community that they famously put together, I think it was a $40 million roster last year to try to compete for the national championship. They ultimately won. We all heard about Bryce Underwood, and his thing. He's getting paid $12 million, to come in and be the quarterback at University of Michigan. This is what Big Ten football is. The money's on the table. People will go where the money's at. That's not even bringing in Oregon to the equation or USC or some of these bigger, institutions. Penn State just fired Franklin with, what was it, 40, 50 million left on the contract to get out there. The Big Ten, man, I think it's time. They might be the superior conference, and it's cool that UCLA is a part of that if we can make the right adjustments. Making a bowl game in this conference, that would be huge for UCLA moving forward.
Huge indeed, Thriller. And, really nice segue to a very interesting tweet, earlier this week. Ben Bolch, who's done such a great job in terms of his coverage of UCLA. I mean, he's love him, hate him. I mean, sort of what incredible coverage, polarizing, captivating, so incredible over these last few weeks. A very interesting tweet where he lists out the odds for the next UCLA head coach via BetOnline, which has been a sponsor of LAFB. So, our friends at BetOnline, you got to love that. And I thought it was a very interesting list, Thriller, and I want to get your thoughts. But headlining the list in terms of most favorable odds, Jed Fisch, our man, comes in at 3-1, followed by Jonathan Smith at 4-1. And then you got James Franklin at 9-2. You got Dion at 5-1. You got Kenny Dillingham at 6-1. You got Brian Kelly at 7-1. And then you got a bunch of folks kind of 10-1 and below, including John Gruden at 10-1. And then on you go in the list. Just your initial impressions, Thriller, of that list, things that caught your eye, any surprises, and just any thoughts you were able to glean from it.
Yeah, it's opened the portal of candidates, I think, to a lot of different people. And, I tweeted out today, fan base, let me know, who do you guys want? This is a pretty extensive list of odds and candidates as a matter of fact for that. Out of the 30 responses I got 28 different answers for who the next head coach should be. So it's all over the place. But, the Franklin and Kelly ones are a little interesting because when you look at the Florida jobs, the LSU one, the Penn State one, none of those guys are going to be considered for those. They'd probably be looking at the Arkansas, the Virginia Techs, maybe UCLA in those equations as well. So it's really interesting. It's one of the toughest times to hire a coach given all the turnover that's been in college football this year. So there's a lot of different guys. I think Jonathan Smith at 4-1, it feels like a retread. I have not been impressed with what we've seen. We talked about the Michigan State game. I just am kind of out. I think maybe a year ago we would have been interested, but his tenure there hasn't been great. It's encouraging to see Fisch at the top of that list, man, because that was our number one candidate. We got excited when we heard that article from Pete Nakos, kind of linking him that the committee has leaked out a little bit that they're very interested in Fisch. It's cool to see him have the best odds because I think Fisch is great. Had a huge win against Illinois this past weekend. Damon Williams was back to looking like a Heisman candidate in that performance. That's the type of coach you want. When it comes to, Deion, I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from Colorado. I think I'd be interested to see how committed he is to coaching here on out because he's got some health issues.
Right.
A little worried. I would never question the recruiting and stuff like that. But the thing with Deion, it's always been about the X's and O's. How can we scheme up?
Right.
So if you keep Jerry and Kevin Coyle or maybe even Skip in some capacity with Deion at the helm, talk me into that. The most realistic ones I see, I really like Ryan Silverfield from Memphis. And he's from a tenure of, he was on that coaching staff, man, that famous coaching staff at Memphis when I was out there. I used to work for the Memphis athletic department. It was Mike Norvell as the head coach, Dillingham as the OC, and Dan Lanning, of all people at Oregon, as the defensive coordinator. Silverfield was an offensive assistant there at the time. He's gone 49-22 as the head coach in Memphis. He's 18-1. I think that's a good option that hasn't been mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
I see, Sumrall from, Tulane. We love that Tulane team that beat, SC in the Cotton Bowl a couple of years ago. What a collapse by the Trojans across town. We definitely love that here on this podcast. But, would you entertain a Brian Kelly or a James Franklin if the interest was there? Because, listen, it flamed out badly for both of these guys, but their overall tenure and their success in the past, that wouldn't be a terrible, terrible hire for UCLA given the circumstances they're in right now.
No, not at all, Thriller. And it's interesting that you mentioned those two names because as I go through this list, obviously Silverfield, Summerall, there's a lot of potential there. I think some other names are sort of deeper on that list that don't quite make a lot of sense. But I'll tell you one thing. Thriller, my goodness, what a year in college football to be looking for a head coach. I mean, LSU, Florida, Penn State, you got to believe that the Wisconsin job's going to open up. You got to believe that the Florida State job is going to open up. You got to believe that the Auburn job is going to open up. You still have Arkansas. You still have Oklahoma State. You still have Virginia Tech. You still have UCLA. That's 10 jobs. That's 10 Power 4 jobs, Thriller, that are open right now. So, the joke is going that, my goodness, Lane Kiffin has just, made himself a bag of money no matter what he does, given what a candidate he is. But it's very interesting. To me, I completely agree with everything that you said. Fisch is still kind of I think yours and my number one guy. Yeah. Fisch he checks all the boxes in terms of what you need out of West Coast football, and I think it would be a home run hire. The other coach that I think would be a real home run, I think Summerall, Silverfield, all attainable guys. I think the fan base would be, pretty happy with those guys. They'll need to prove it at the Power 4 level and certainly capable of doing so. Here's what's interesting about Kelly and Franklin. I think, Thriller, a very attainable candidate potentially is which one of those two guys doesn't get the Wisconsin job. Because if you think about Wisconsin and you think about Franklin and the success in the Big Ten, and you also think about Brian Kelly, what has been the big knock with Brian Kelly at LSU? Just not a cultural fit. He's a Midwest guy. I mean, it was pretty stunning, Thriller. 34-14 at LSU in 4 years. Got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and he got axed, with how these last 3 games. It's not like Brian Kelly was terrible at LSU by any stretch of the imagination. Heck, he beat Saban his first year and beat Alabama. So it's not like this was sort of an F coaching job. He wasn't transcended by any stretch of the imagination. And these last 4 weeks for LSU, they really fell off a cliff. And so you felt like you had to make the change. But my God, wouldn't Brian Kelly kind of be perfect at Wisconsin? In terms of that Big Ten, Wisconsin, what do they need more than anything? They need a vertical pass game to be able to go with, the big meat on the trenches. They've always had a great running game. Couldn't Kelly come in there and really be a nice fit? Similarly with Franklin. I mean, Wisconsin is built very similarly to Penn State. Wisconsin sort of fallen off. I think Wisconsin fans would love the opportunity to be double-digit wins every year and really threaten Ohio State and Michigan. And you wonder if Franklin kind of learned from his Penn State experience to say, how do I come in and beat these guys? So to me, I actually think, to your point, those two guys don't feel like fits with LSU or Florida or potentially Florida State and some of those kind of Southeast schools. But, Wisconsin to me seems attractive to both of those guys. And the guy that perhaps doesn't get the Wisconsin job, I think becomes a very viable candidate for UCLA, particularly given the fact that each of those two guys are getting a very sizable buyout. And so they're not going to be financially necessarily obsessed with making, the absolute high end of the market. Franklin's got a $50 million buyout. Kelly, they're talking about what the buyout's going to be. A lot of reports out there. Did he take a concession at 20 or 30? Is he going to get the full 50? But both these guys are going to have sizable buyouts where they might be willing to take a little bit less to sort of revive what they could see as a football sleeping giant on the West Coast. Your thoughts, Thriller?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good fit for Brian Kelly if Wisconsin does open up as expected. The sleeping giant of the jobs here is, in terms of money and what they could offer, to me, is Arkansas, because they're at SEC. Listen, we talked about donors to start this off, right? Who's a guy in Dallas, Texas, that's at the end of his life, similar to Phil Knight, that wants to see Arkansas competing for a national championship? Right. Jerry freaking Jones. He has them play in his stadium in Dallas every single year. I'm sure he's going to be on the committee. That's probably the first phone call they made as a donor. Hey, Jerry, do you want to get involved and help us hire the new head coach at Arkansas? So I'm a little worried because there's a package there with very little state taxes in Arkansas where you can come out like a bank robber if you hire the right coach there. So James Franklin's there. And then, like you said, man, Florida State and Auburn, like those are like top 15, 20 jobs when they open up. You know what I mean? And not to say UCLA can't compete with those guys. We just need a lot more funding as it stands right now to do that, because I remember hearing the rumor Florida State was trying to get, like, what was it, like, one of the financial institutions.
Yeah, JP Morgan.
Yep. Yeah, JP Morgan to try to like back them. If that's something that's real, like they're going to get any coach they want, because of Jimmy Sexton's going to have his guys go down there and try to sign up with Florida State immediately. So, like, those are really good jobs. Auburn's obviously going to put a ton of money. It's Alabama and Auburn, guys. Like, this is what they do. This is all they care about. So it is a crazy time to hire somebody. And I'll be honest, if Skipper, Jerry, and Coyle get us to a bowl game this year, I'm down to maybe run it back another year, kind of just wait it out. Maybe we can find a good candidate next year, as it won't be as hard to find a new coach. But as it stands, man, Fisch is my number one choice. I'm a little worried with that Florida job opening up, as we talked about. Like, that's his alma mater. Like, that would be a place he would love to go to by all accounts. I know Kiffin's like the hot name in the, in the candidacy right now. Ole Miss might open up if Kiffin.
Exactly.
So, like, it's just, it's the trading places right now is just such a crazy concept to wrap your head around with all the coaches. So let's just hope UCLA ends up with the right coach. I don't care who the coach is at this point. Just make sure it's the right one.
No, I totally agree, Will, and so well said. I think, we've talked about this a lot in terms of who's really good and then who's also attainable and then who's a good fit, right? Like, you're a great coach, you're attainable, and do you fit with UCLA values, West Coast football? And I think for all of three of those, I think Jedd Fisch would be, kind of this home run hire. But I'll be honest with you, if Franklin and Kelly go to a Wisconsin or they try and get some other job, after those two names, if I look at this list, and you and I have talked about Kenny Dillingham, how much we love him, but I know you and I have sort of talked about, he's an alum of Arizona State. His heart is there. He's in many ways, from a mentality perspective, the Jerry Neuheisel of Arizona State, right? I mean, like, this is sort of where his heart is. Maybe if an NFL job opens up, it would be his hometown Cardinals, and but he's very much an Arizona guy. Yeah. I agree with you with Dion. I think the novelty of not coaching his sons anymore, coupled with the health challenges, it just feels like maybe one more year at Colorado and he's going to fade away. And I think Silverfield and Summerall are there potentially for the taking. So this to me comes down to what Skipper, if he can get them to a bowl game, Thriller, with this schedule, I think the committee, particularly in this marketplace that's going to be sort of bananas with these 10 jobs opening up, there's a path now. It's getting more and more credible for Skipper to sign a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract with a very minimal buyout with this staff and bring them back. I think 6 is that number. If he gets to 6-3, beats SC, gets to a bowl game, wins the victory bell, and had to go on the road against number 1 and number 2 and still found a way to go 6-3, I think that's a significant achievement. But we're starting to see that pack separate a bit. I agree with you. I don't understand why Jonathan Smith is so high. We loved him, but man, this is a really tough year 2 here. Michigan State is winless in the Big Ten. This thing has been falling off very, very quickly. So maybe I think the odds are so in favor because maybe his price at this point is lower than the others. But at the same time, I think UCLA's got to really look at, it's not just about price. You got to get quality at the right price moving forward, and that's why we have the committee there. But Thriller, so much to sort of unpack in the weeks to come. We're on a bye, so I think we're going to have some really interesting conversations about, the next game, where this season is headed. But any closing thoughts before we sign off for our fans?
Man, it's one bad loss. It doesn't mean a bad season. So, if we come back and beat Nebraska next week, I think we're right back on track of where we wanted to be. Don't get me wrong, we got curb stomped by Indiana this past week. I hate to say it, but Indiana is that good, guys. I've run out of superlatives to describe this Indiana football team and the job Signetti is doing. But Nebraska's beatable, man. They were right in that. Northwestern almost pulled off an upset against them. And Maryland, the team that we just beat, almost beat them as well. So, guys, we got a real shot here. So let's get it going. Let's see what we can do. A lot to play for this season. Bowl game, hopefully, on the way for our UCLA Bruins.
On the way for our UCLA Bruins, indeed, Thriller. And I love what you said. One loss doesn't define a season. And, folks, before we get out of here, we got to pay the bills, as we always do. You see the Sleeper app below. Number 1 sports betting app on the market today. You got live stats. You got real-time feeds. You got chat features to be able to engage with the community. $100 off your match bonus. You spend $100, you get $100 for free. So 100 becomes 200. And use that promo code UCLA LAFB and tell them the guys at LAFB sent you. Enjoy the number 1 sports betting app in the United States today, the one and only Sleeper app. Well, folks, that's all we got for this episode of our great Bruin Bible and Thriller. We're going to be back together in a few days. We're going to break down Nebraska. We'll see if anything else breaks on this coaching search. We'll see if somebody else gets fired. It feels like everyone's getting fired every 48 hours. How that's going to impact the marketplace. What's the committee going to do? What do we got going on in terms of practice? So much to uncover here in the days to come. But as always, folks, we just saw a team that very realistically could win the national championship. So let's bring ourselves back up, chin up, lots more to play for. And like we always say, be loud, be proud, be passionate, Bruins. And as we always say at LAFB, 4s up forever.